Welcome to the Gus Alva Perspective, a video cast that's earmarked to embrace gratitude and abundance over the flip side, which is fear and scarcity. The topic that I'd like to touch on today is being one of being well traveled. What does that mean? Well, gratitude is in acknowledging that sometimes we get the privilege of being able to learn more by simply traveling. It's an amazing thing, but sometimes people are born and live out their lives in a secluded spot of geography. And that is something that I oftentimes kind of wonder, wow, what an incredible um, lack of having had an opportunity of being able to enhance one's experience of being alive. When we travel, we add education, we add wisdom, we add understanding to our uh, way of thinking. Why? By looking at different customs and by trying to acculturate to some of the differences in customs of different places, we oftentimes then learn how to be better prepared for being able to address the needs of other people. Sometimes we worry that there are certain things that are being done that might be healthy, others that might be harmful. We might approach traveling in either a lazy, lackadaisical manner or an intentional one where we're actually thinking things through as to what we'd like to uh, be able to revolve ourselves around, what we'd like to be able to plunge into so as to be able to experience a bit more. Take, for example, a friend who not only travels quite a lot, but ties in a lot of benevolence around that travel. He has a wonderful nonprofit that's called Lights for Literacy. And literally, what these guys do is that they basically have these solar powered lights that they subsequently bring to Africa, to remote areas where children will subsequently be able to read books with the utilization of a light, and thus the nonprofit being called Lights for Literacy. And that's a great example of individuals who happen to be just good human beings, but in their travels have picked up on the needs of different individuals and now wanting to embrace and help out with the needs of those folks. Take, for example, also, different types of groups, whether they be religious or otherwise, where they go in and try to create different uh, houses or housing for individuals. Habitats for Humanity, a great example of a good organization where people will travel and colleagues that I have actually gone out also with some of these missions and given out medical care to people that are in need. But that's one aspect of travel, being able to help out our fellow brethren out there. But the travel also that is mundane can leave us with such a sense of satisfaction as well. I didn't start traveling until I was actually in my early 20s. Prior to that, as a family, we took trips around the US, but not really a lot of trips abroad. Subsequently, I started doing so, and the world literally opened up for me. And one of the things that I always found as a really neat experience with my children was to have one of them tag along with me on different trips and visit different cities and explore them. And I think that any one of them could probably attest to the fact that, I like walking cities and I like being immersed in the feel of a new place and being able to embrace, the vibe or the spirit of that particular place. Now, we did another segment about situational awareness, and that becomes a very important piece, particularly nowadays. We shouldn't be fearful and not travel, but we should have an awareness of what's happening around us. Just recently, my eldest daughter was visiting Morocco and subsequently Marrakesh with our other little adopted daughter practically. And on the last day of their outing, somebody came and snatched a purse off of um, my daughter's best friend. Uh, Obviously, the girls were mortified because they were alone in a different country, and the customs and the people, the so-called professionals, weren't necessarily wearing uniforms, and uh, the law enforcement individuals didn't necessarily have any defining garb that would actually denote them as being law enforcers. And so, it was a bit of a scary moment for them. Fortunately, they had the situational awareness to call attention to themselves. No harm came to them. But that's a great example of a situation that could have potentially soured the entire experience that these two young ladies had. But they subsequently thought through of the entire content of their voyage and basically reflected on the fact that this was an unfortunate situation that came about. Nothing bad arose from it, thank goodness. But it didn't sour the experience of having been able to embrace a different culture, a different setting, different foods, different sights, smells, sounds, and so on, different religious perspectives. And those are the very themes that I touch on with discussing with others about the virtue and the merit associated with traveling. Utilizing public transportation in different places might be quite dangerous in certain cities, and obviously it's very important to keep that in mind. But in other places where that's okay, embracing that is kind of a neat experience. One of my colleagues just came back from Japan, and she was describing the rapid transit through the trains and the fact that it was just so organized and such an amazing experience. I can reflect back on going into the subways in New York many years ago. Probably would not be doing that right now with the current state of the land in how it is there, but being with my son and all of a sudden being able to speak in different languages with different people that were coming into the subway and really finding sort of like this Tower of Babel where people were speaking different idioms, different languages, and it was just kind of nice being able to communicate with people. Um, and that was a very edifying lesson for my son as well. It help him then have an understanding of why it's so important to be a polyglot, to know more than one language, to be able to be acculturated to the places where you go, because that ultimately edifies who we are. So gratitude, in fact, is having the opportunity. Not everyone does have this opportunity or privilege, but if able to do so, even going on a you know backpack in your backpack in your session, and maybe hitting different hostels along the way or different places. That's an adventure in and of itself, and it's a way of actually maturing and learning more things. In the past, people would oftentimes say that the more well-traveled one was, the more educated they were. I think that still stands, and I think that that's an important piece that we should always take back. Reflect on the different journeys that you've taken and reflect on the fact that they probably have edified you in such a way that you are the individual that you are in part because of that travel. So, be it Gulliver or be it whoever, gratitude is in having the opportunity to travel and take much from that experience. I thank you for being with us on the Gus Alva Perspective.